You found the house. You negotiated the offer. The seller accepted it. You paid for the inspection. Your lender is moving everything forward. And then you get the phone call. Lisa, the appraisal came in low. Now what? Do you have to come up with thousands of dollars? Does the seller have to lower the price? Can you walk away? And could this completely kill the entire deal? If you are buying a home in Southern Maryland, especially if you're moving from one home into another, this is something you need to understand before you ever write the offer. Because an appraisal problem does not automatically mean the transaction is over. It means we need to understand the numbers, the contract, and your options. Today, I'm going to walk you through exactly what a low appraisal can mean and how I help buyers think through the next move. First, let's clear up one major misconception. The appraisal is not there to tell you whether you personally love the house. It is primarily there to help the lenders determine whether the property provides sufficient collateral for the loan. Let's use an example. Suppose you find a home in Waldorf listed for $625. You love it. It has the finished basement. It has the larger yard. It has the home office. It has the garage. And it finally gives your family the space you've been looking for. Your offer, $625, and the seller accepted. But the appraisal comes back at $610. Now we have a $15,000 difference. And this is where buyers sometimes panic. But before anybody panics, I want to look at several things. What does your contract say? How much cash do you have available? How much do you actually believe this home is worth to you? Does the appraisal appear to have missed something? And is the seller willing to renegotiate? A low appraisal is a problem to solve, not automatically a reason to lose the house. Let's talk about your first possible option. The seller could reduce the price. In our example, perhaps the seller agrees to reduce the sales price from 625 to 610. Wonderful. Problem solved, right? Potentially. But sellers are not automatically required to reduce their price simply based on an appraisal that comes in lower. Their obligations depend on the contract. And emotionally, that can be difficult for buyers to understand. You may be thinking, but the appraiser said it's only worth 610. The seller may be thinking, I had multiple buyers interested at 625. Both things can exist at the same time. So now we negotiate. Maybe the seller comes down part of the way. Maybe the buyer contributes some additional cash. Maybe there are other financial pieces of the transaction that can be adjusted. The appraisal gives us information. Your contract gives us options. That's an important distinction. Now let's talk about paying an appraisal gap. If the home appraises for 610, but you agree to pay 625, you may decide that the home is still worth 625 to you. That does not necessarily mean your lender suddenly loans you the additional $15,000. The loan calculation may be based on the appraised value, depending on your financing. So you could potentially need additional cash. But before agreeing to do that, I want my buyer to ask a bigger question. What are we getting for that additional money? Is this a house that fits a very specific need? Is this neighborhood difficult to get into? Does it have acreage? Is it an unusual floor plan? Is it a premium lot? Are there very few comparable homes available? Or are there three similar houses around the corner? Just because you can cover an appraisal gap doesn't mean you should. This is where strategy matters. Now we could challenge the appraisal, potentially. An appraisal reconsideration is not simply calling the appraiser and saying we disagree. We need information. Maybe there's a comparable sale that was missed. Maybe the appraiser used a property that is significantly different. Maybe there's information about the subject property that needs clarification. Your lender controls the formal appraisal process, so we work through the appropriate channels. And sometimes the value changes. Sometimes it doesn't. You challenge an appraisal with facts, not feelings. Now let's talk about the move up buyer because this can become especially important to you. Imagine you are selling your townhouse in White Plains and buying a larger single family home in La Plata. You already calculated the equity from your sale. Part of that money is going toward your down payment. Part is going toward closing expenses. And maybe you intentionally kept some money in savings because you don't want to drain your reserves. Then suddenly someone says, we need another $20,000 because of the appraisal. That can completely change your financial comfort level. This is why I don't want to begin discussing appraisal risk after we receive the appraisal. I want to discuss it when we're writing the offer. What happens if the appraisal comes in 5,000 below? What about 10,000? What about 25,000? At what point would you no longer feel comfortable? Your appraisal gap strategy should be decided before emotions enter the transaction. Now, my question to you, if you're watching this because you're currently house hunting, tell me in the comments, would you ever pay more than the appraised value for the perfect house? Yes or no? I'm curious because buyers feel very differently about this. And while you're there, subscribe, because every Friday I'm talking about the real questions Southern Maryland buyers and sellers face when they're actually preparing to make a move. Now let's discuss something else buyers often misunderstand. Price and value are related, but they're not always identical. A seller can list a house for one amount, a buyer can offer another amount, and an appraiser can arrive at another opinion of value. The transaction works when we can bring those two pieces together. And remember, appraisers are looking backward at available comparable sales. Buyers are sometimes purchasing based on what is available right now. That can become especially interesting in communities with newer construction. Suppose you're comparing a nearly new resale property in White Plains with brand new construction nearby. The builder may be offering incentives. The resale seller may have already installed a deck, blinds, fencing, upgraded lighting, and finished spaces. Those features matter to you, but the appraisal still has to be supported appropriately. The most expensive house isn't always overpriced. The lowest appraisal isn't automatically the final word. Now, could we terminate? Possibly. But again, the answer depends on your contract and the protections you've negotiated. This is why I don't want buyers signing offers they don't understand. We need to know what happens if financing becomes a problem. What happens if the appraisal is low? What deadlines apply? And what choices you have. For legal interpretation of your contract, an attorney may be appropriate. My role as your realtor is to help you understand a real estate strategy, coordinate with your lender and other professionals, and make sure we're not ignoring important details. So let's recap. If the appraisal comes in low, we may have several paths. We can review the appraisal. We can determine whether a reconsideration is appropriate. We can negotiate with the seller. You may decide to contribute additional cash. The seller may adjust the price. Both parties may compromise. Or depending on your contract, you may have another option. The goal isn't to win the appraisal argument. The goal is to make a financially sound decision about the house. If you're buying in Accokeek, Waldorf, White Plains, Fort Washington, Clinton, Brandywine, La Plata, Upper Marlboro, or elsewhere in Southern Maryland, this is exactly the type of conversation I want us to have before you're under pressure. Again, I'm Lisa Pinder with the Pinder Group of eXp Realty. If you're thinking about buying your next home, reach out to me. We'll look at your financing, your current home, if you need to sell, your cash position, your search, and your comfort level, and create a personalized plan for how you can make this move. Because surprises may happen in real estate, but being completely unprepared for them doesn't have to.